one question I'll oftentimes ask when I'm in the class, I'll say, for those of you who have ever had a child or have had a niece or nephew or something, one of the first things that people oftentimes do when they have a child is fairly soon thereafter, after you get through the whole birthing process, which is usually kind of a focal point there for a little bit. But as soon as the baby gets cleaned up, it's healthy, and you've cleaned up a little bit. One of the first things people do is they start calling people, or they start texting, or they start Facebook posting pictures of their baby. There's the baby, it's here. And the reason is because they take great joy in the arrival of this child, right? And you can take that in comparison to, say, for example, when I was a kid, we had fish, and sometimes the fish would give birth to babies. And one of the things that you would do is when you saw the little guppy babies, you would need to get a net, and you would have like a little separate area in the tank you could keep the babies, and you would scoop them up and you'd put them over there, because as soon as those babies were born, some of the other fish would start thinking, I don't want to tweet about this, I want to eat them. And they would begin to eat the fins off of the little we've had babies all the time, but I know that a few times we had babies that when we had fish, they would sometimes give birth, and that would be one of the things we would make sure to do. We'd make sure to separate out these fish so they didn't get eaten. And so what happens is you can kind of take a difference. And when we as humans have babies, we take great pleasure in it. But when they are, if you're a fish, on the other hand, you're like, whatever, glad I'm not as big anymore, I guess is their main thought. I can swim a lot easier, and boy, that was good to get done with. And so what happens is fish, let's be honest, they swim around with poop hanging out their butt. They're not exactly all that deep of thinkers. And so what happens is that as far as it goes, that Mill takes this recognition that humans have a greater ability to appreciate the pleasure and pain. Pain and pleasure are multiplied when you have intellect. Intelligence gives us the ability to appreciate the pleasure as well as to appreciate the pain. Depression can be much worse if you have an awareness. If you know a lot of stuff, it can be more painful. There's a saying from the Proverbs in the Christian and Jewish and Islamic tradition, the book of Proverbs. That one of them is it's credited to King Solomon writing this, and one of them is he who increases wisdom increases sorrow. He who knows more will also have more pain, and that's an idea from the Proverbs, that he who increases wisdom increases pain, and so what happens is that all of them have this recognition that knowledge can bring pain. Because when you know more and you're more aware of problems, you're more aware of threats, you're more aware of these things, it causes pain. If you knew every possible threat that faced you, every possible disease you get, every possible issue in your society, everybody's problems, the more knowledge you have of that stuff, the less you probably will enjoy life, okay? Because you'll be more obsessed with it. But at the same time, the more knowledge you have, at the same time, it also gives you a greater awareness to enjoy what you have at the moment. For example, I know I have kids. I know I have a job. I'm very busy. Last night I slept like 9 hours. It was awesome. It was like the best thing in the world. But most of the week I sleep about 4 or 5, and it's like one day a week I sleep in. But I also realize that 2 or 3 years from now, my kids are both going to be in school, and I'm not going to have what I have right now. I get to spend a lot of time with them, and I get to work on these classes in the evenings and at other times. But right now, during the day, when I get up in the morning, I feed them breakfast, we play, we go outside, we have a good time. And the awareness that will someday end, that this is just a stage in life, gives me great ability to appreciate it, but also to be sad that it will be ending. And at the end of the day, that knowledge of that fact gives me a greater appreciation for both the positives and the negatives of this time. And that quantifies it. That takes that pleasure and takes it from simply a 5 to to multiply it, the awareness. And the idea is that as you get more and more knowledge, as you get more and more information, you will increase your pleasure. And so what happens is Mill, who was raised in this very strict educational environment where he had to have all this knowledge and all this information and everything else at a very young, early age, Mill realizes that he has a mental breakdown, but he also realizes he wouldn't give up that knowledge because that knowledge gives him the ability to experience pleasure and pain more acutely, and that makes it better. And so he ends up suggesting that it is better to have knowledge than not knowledge. He comes to the saying that it's better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. It's better to be a human dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. It's better to be a person with problems and troubles than to be a happy pig. Now, everybody in life probably goes through a period that has life. They'd say, I think I'd be okay with the idea that if tomorrow morning I woke up and I was just a happy fool, right? I had no awareness. I had a friend, I remember. Now, this friend's since, grown a little older, and he's not quite as naive as he used to be. But this friend of mine sometimes he would go out and he would just do the silliest, stupidest things, but he never had any awareness of the fact that he was doing silly, stupid things. He'd ask girls out and they'd basically laugh at him, and he would do silly things, and then he'd just be like, okay, I'll go ask another girl, right? It didn't bother him at all, right? He just went out and did his life, right? Whereas me, I'm like sitting there like, neurotic and obsessive about this stuff, and I'd be like, I'd get one negative reaction, I'd be like, okay, I think I'll just go home and drink, and so what happens is that he was sort of this happy fool. Now he grew up and he's now not near. He's married now. He's whatever. But he's definitely has a very different take on this now. But the case is that I always sort of admired this, that, you could go out there and just be sort of, oblivious. That I've oftentimes thought, wouldn't it be great just to be a pig or a dog and just lay around on the couch all day and just, people provide you with food and your only real worry is whether or not they're going to get home in time to let you out to go to the bathroom, or you're just going to have to use the carpet in a place that hopefully they don't find before it dries up. That's your biggest concern in life. And so the case is that, this is essentially what, there's something admirable about that. But at the end of the day, I think as much as you might admire those things, you might say, I want to be that happy fool. I want to be this guy who's sort of, oblivious to other people's reactions to their silliness. That I could be a dog and just enjoy life. But at the end of the day, we still prefer to be knowledgeable. We still prefer to experience pleasure and pain in a way that we still prefer to have not be the happy fool or not be the dog, and to experience the pain and not have that happiness. Because when we do experience pleasure, when we do experience positive things, the knowledge we have, the awareness of ourselves makes those so much better. And that's what Mill is getting at. That even though he has this mental breakdown, even though he does these other things, it is better to be educated and to know these things.